Wonderful. Thank you very much. Great to be here. Amazing to see such a full room for a workshop. We can see that technology is definitely an interesting topic for everybody and has become more and more at the core and center for many hotel operations. And in most discussions, we think about tech either to increase, guest experience on one side or really focusing on cutting costs. But today we wanted to have a workshop and talk about how can we actually increase the guest experience, enable exceptional stays, but with leaner operations. And at the end of the day, looking at our P&L, we looked at it this morning with the hot stats report. The P&L is definitely under attack via an increase on the cost structures. And we want to talk about it a bit in more detail. So what can you expect in the discussion? We'll talk about challenges in the market, the technology, how it can be used, strategy and objectives from real operators and how they're implementing today, how they see this as a competitive advantage, and how other hoteliers can leverage that. Maybe if we have time, we only have 25 minutes, we can even have a quick outlook on AI. We didn't want to bring in too many buzzwords, but more talk about hard facts, KPIs, and strategy that you guys can actually take something out of here than the next buzzword stories. So before I introduce my two guests, I would also introduce myself. So my name is Florian. I'm VP of Business Development at Apaleo. Apaleo is a property management platform based in Munich. We have around 2,000 hotels today operating with our property management system with brands like Citizen which are definitely known here in London and across the globe, as well as staffless operators like Numa, who acquired Native Places here in the UK last year and are bringing also a new tech-enabled hospitality concept, but also with a large amount of independent hoteliers, interesting concepts. And today we have two great concepts which will be presented in a second. So before I give Lina and Matt the opportunity to introduce themselves, I just wanted to give a quick outlook on where do we see from the market perspective technology. So here, Sébastien Bazin, and to be honest, this is already a couple years old, this slide. It's about, at the time, tech was a tool. Often it's still seen in hospitality as tech is just a tool. Today, it's becoming more and more a differentiator. We heard about it, revenue management, certain ways of bringing operational efficiencies, but often not yet really at the core fabric of hospitality. So really enabling your services, your value proposition, and bringing it to the next level. When we look at some outside market drivers, here we see that business disruption is definitely via technology. We see cybersecurity. Everybody feels it in the hospitality business. There's a lot of phishing attacks, a lot of attacks on hospitality businesses. But I think especially in the UK, it's not just labor shortages, but it's also in general a labor cost increase. And how can you operate at the same prices for guests or similar prices for guests without a decrease in profits? And we have some great examples here on how this can be executed. So let's start with the discussion. Let's start, Matt, with you on the left. Maybe you can quickly introduce yourself in a couple sentences with your personal background as well, and also give a quick introduction to the room for what is Mollie's, where do you guys position yourself in the market. And last point, if you have any questions or you want to add a comment or something, please feel free to raise your hand, and let's make it interactive in that sense.
Thanks, Florian. So I'm Matthew Bell. I'm the managing director for Mollie's. Mollie's is a motel and diner brand that was born out of Soho House 5-6 years ago now. Now independent from Soho House, but we have two properties. One, the first we opened was in Oxfordshire, and the second one in Bristol, both roadside motel concepts. in December, and we literally announced it yesterday. We will open December the 8th in Manchester. That's been a slightly difficult process, I think 7 years in the making, but we'll open our first city centre hotel in Manchester on the 8th of December. And the principle of Mollie's is to revisit this notion of budget hospitality. We fundamentally believe that budget doesn't need to be ordinary and that stylish doesn't have to be expensive. My background was with Citizen M. Some of those words will sound familiar from Citizen M and the notion of affordable luxury. And our intent at Mollie's is to scale that brand in a similar way that Citizen M has done, which is through centralized management and local execution of the hotel and the hospitality side of things within that. And just one part to say is that 50% of our revenue within Mollie's is food and beverage led, and the other 50% comes from rooms business.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Lina, you have a bit of a different perspective with Siggis Capital. Can you give us a quick intro on yourself, Siggis, but also the current projects you're developing?
So Siggis Capital was founded in 2017, and it's a hospitality investment, development and management firm. We operate across across the spectrum, from economy lifestyle to luxury, from boutique hotels to large-scale assets, with particular focus in independent properties, where obviously, and character-led assets, where technology plays a very pivotal role.
Perfect. Great introduction. I'm staying in one of your new properties at the moment, Bertrand's townhouse, and looking at your pipeline. It's also very impressive what you guys are building up. And following up on that, for you, especially as a commercial director, you have a very specific view, I would say, on technology, also on how to scale a business. Can you share us a bit, how do you see technology from a commercial director perspective, but also for Siggis Capital? How do you look at the role of tech?
As I mentioned, technology for us is very important. Effectively, the way we look at it, the technology is as private equity investor. So we treat it as infrastructure for efficiency, for profitability, and for guest experience. So I guess it's fair to say we're very pragmatic about technology and what we expect it to do. And I think it's fair to say we're quite, I would even say, allergic to vanity tech. We like to experiment, but we don't experiment for the sake of fun. It has to drive value. If there is no return on investment, then there is no rollout.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a show of hands in the room. Who of the operators, GMs, finance directors, etc., feel that you have clear metrics and KPIs in your business on measuring the success of the technology you're implementing? That's it's a statement. Perfect. So I think there's definitely quite a lot of discussions to have there as well, right? Like, how can we see how tech can really bring value? Maybe just a follow-up question here for you, Lina. You have two different work streams, right? You have your hybrid concepts, or hybrid hotel concepts, and you have your boutique hotel aspect. Do you look at when you look at both concepts, you look at tech in the same way with the same KPIs and the same kind of framework? Or do you say, oh no, actually in the boutique hotels, we need to look at it differently because it's more service, it's more personal, so it has a different impact?
So we've already successfully kind of established the principle and the model in our previous projects, such as the Zeta hotels and the Jacobs pod hostels. And we right now are busy with those dual work streams, as you mentioned. One of them, and they're quite different, one of them is large-scale properties. So we're talking about anything from 300 to 1,000 keys per asset across different, it's a pan-European new generation strategy, where technology will have a very important role. It moves the dial and it has a direct impact to the bottom line. On that note, for us, the second work stream that we are right now busy with is those two hotels that you mentioned. So it's they are not big, they are luxury boutique hotels located in London, Fulham Pier Hotel in Fulham and Bertrand's Townhouse just behind the British Museum. With those properties, we are right now using them as testbeds, effectively as a way to test the new technology, because we are very conscious that what was relevant yesterday may not be relevant today. So we're using this momentum to effectively test and make sure that every system that we choose is ready for scale-up, is ready for that large-scale properties. So look, in summary, it's two very distinct work streams, but one backbone, and that is the technology.
Mm-hmm. Matt, Mollie's comes out of Soho House, as you mentioned as well. So you think about design, experience. However, it's in a motel business model. How do you bring both worlds together? Business being experience-driven and maybe also a bit more competitive on price.
So look, I think that the critical part here is that within Mollie's, and maybe I wasn't clear, but my background for 12 years prior to Mollie's was with Citizen and principally in everything that we're doing, we're putting the customer at the heart in that basis, and we want to create a great fundamental experience for the customer, and we're very people-orientated brands, both Citizen and Mollie's. And then when you're playing in this affordable space, when you want to be competitive on price, whether that be in a city centre prime location like Citizen or whether you're in a roadside environment, you have to work out how do you ensure that what you're taking in your revenue is flowing through efficiently into the bottom line. And so the principle stays the same, which is you have to stay lean. And technology is one of the fundamental enablers of that to ensure you create that model. And there's multiple ways that we can use technology through that process. And the shift in the technology landscape is only making that easier through the centralized operating model, so that we can actually make sure that those teams on property are really focused on experience, and that centrally we can put the specialization in to support the broader sort of financial viability piece of what's happening in the business. But I think it really starts with having a very clear purpose, very clear identity, and then understanding how technology is an enabler within that. And that's where you start to see the opportunities and the margins to find those efficiencies and blend a premium product at a very approachable price.
At the end of the day, I think both you clearly already told us that you're not implementing tech for the sake of technology. Can you maybe give us a couple sentences, Matt, from your perspective? Mollie's with 2 properties today, third one is opening, as an operator and brand, definitely with the goal of growing. How did you look at your technology decisions to be able to support your objectives?
Yes. So again, a slight imposter syndrome, sat on stage here in front of so many brilliant hoteliers, and I think, but our philosophy principle is we understand the core KPIs that drive our business. There's a common metrics throughout. And I think it is making sure that everyone is very clear on what that is and how they influence them, and then ensuring your technology stack is supportive of the delivering against those KPIs, and that there's visibility within that. And therefore you create that level of ownership throughout the business around performance, whatever those metrics are defined as. And you make that information extremely visible to everyone within it. Our approach in terms of how we built the technology stack, and it's the same in Citizen and as it is at Mollie's, is we have an aggregated technology stack so that we can identify what we consider to be the best-in-class solutions that support each business function. So we're meeting the need of the individual business owners with the technology stack that they need, but based on a set of parameters that we know that we can aggregate that into a single technology stack. And that helps our business to be agile, that the speed of change of the technology landscape is only getting faster, and building agility into our model generally, but also specifically within the technology environment, is a fundamental part of our growth and sustainable growth as we move forward.
So if I understand correctly, how you do your tech selection, business objectives, and then you go out and see what is the best tooling in the different categories to support your business goals, and not what does my vendor offer me, and based on that, I will adapt my business strategy and see what processes I can actually implement.
Yeah, 100%. The same principle is identity purpose-led. You have to be very clear on who you are and what you're trying to achieve, and then find the vendors that are best going to support that with you, both in terms of the actual product, but also from an ideology and a way of working principle as well. That match is really fundamental because you have to go together on this journey.
Lina, for you, and especially also in our conversations before and outside of this presentation, what I love to always to hear or what I find interesting is how often you mention test and validate. How do you go similar on your objectives and tech strategy? Maybe quickly outlining how you go about that, but also how important is this testing phase for you as a business?
So just to give some context before answering your question, and perhaps going back on the KPIs for technology, right? So when we choose, we set each piece of technology to pretty much very clear KPIs in place. It either has to increase the revenue, reduce the costs, or de-risk operations. And if it doesn't do either, and ideally it does all, but if it doesn't do either, then it's pretty much, we rule it out. And often you can ask yourself a question, if I stop using that piece of technology, will anything change? Will my business break? And if the answer is no, then that's the wrong piece. And the way we understand that, there is no better way than puts the technology to test. So as I mentioned, we're using the small-scale hotels right now where we are working with the cloud-based, obviously API-first technology. But number one, we make very quick choice because we don't have any IT department or project management, so we make a very quick decision in terms of choice, and then we see whether it's driving the results or not. And on validation point, we make decisions centrally, but we involve local teams, and we oversee how quickly they're adopting it, how long it took us to deploy the system. And so we very much value the feedback from the team on the ground, yes, with a pinch of salt, but that drives a lot in terms of feedback back to our technology partner. And I think the last point from my side, that just will echo what Matt said. Often when we say technology, it sounds dehumanized, but fundamentally what we are very conscious of is there are people behind each software. There are people who are driving the product, and for us, building relationship, understanding where they are going, what's their work ethics, and are we on the same, wavelength, then that's for us is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important to seek technology, as we saw all of us seeing it now with AI and other elements moving even faster. So always having the partners who don't just deliver what you need today, but who are also real partners for the future.
Precisely. We start with recommendations with our existing relationships, and then we see what the results it drives on the ground.
When we look at going a bit more in detail, and can you maybe share, Lina, on certain elements of how your technology really concretely impacts or positively impacts your business? Are there any specific topics in the direction of, we have it on the title as well, automation, data, or scalability, where you say, this is where your number one focus, or this is a clear focus, and you see the impact on your strategy?
Yes, if it enables our teams to focus on guest interactions, and fundamentally, as long as technology is in the back seat, it's a back of house tool, it doesn't have to be in the face of the guest. So as long as it works for the teams, we see the results, we see that, as I mentioned, we see a better conversion or lower costs or more data coming up, in terms of our guests, which again informs us to make better decisions moving forward. That's fundamentally for us the answer. One of the examples I could use, if you use broadly the same infrastructure across different assets, that enables us to train the teams very quickly, enables them to move across the assets, we like to promote within, and that means that they can adopt immediately.
Mm-hmm. So it's also on that talent side, you say, especially in the world where it's hard to find talent, you can get them much faster onboarded, and when you have a portfolio of properties, you can also move them across on that side, from one property to another.
Precisely, and they can go. They are ready to start. They don't need heavy training. They don't, they're not ready to focus on the guests, right? One other thing where very significant impact technology has for us is when there are 3 touch points. It's operational success, but also when we acquire assets, for us it's very important, easy entry and clean exit. And what I mean by that, we need to be able to deploy the systems very quickly to the new asset we acquire, see a quick ramp up, and as we exit and sell the asset, we need to be able to very quickly to separate the data and provide the access to the new owners.
Mm-hmm. Matt, on your side, we spoke this morning as well a bit about, and we heard it, how do we go through that competitive landscape at the moment with all of the macro factors? Somehow we need to increase revenues, reduce costs, increase profitability. You're now 1 year with the business at Mollie's. Can you share some insights on how do you drive all 3 of these components through strategy and maybe how tech supports you there?
Yeah, for sure. So I think really what we're looking at all the time is realizing that in your business that there are sort of 3 key areas that we consider we're trying to address. One is that core notion of purpose, and that's guest satisfaction. It's sort of, to a large extent, it's why we're there, at what drives us. So looking at our performance from a guest satisfaction perspective. The second component is viability, so the financial performance of the business. And of course, we're looking at the 2 parts. We're looking at how we drive revenue. It's a fundamental piece, and of course, what the flow through of that is. And the third element is employee well-being. Because fundamentally they're the ones that are delivering that experience on property. And so coming into Mollie's, I have to say, started with a very strong food and beverage principle. With Citizen M, of course, with very strong rooms focus, less strength in the F&B space. There was clear opportunity for us within the model to improve the performance on the room side of stuff. And we made the decision to outsource revenue management. We work with Revenue by Design. I think Ali's in the room here. And we asked her to utilize Flyer. I don't think it was a solution that they'd actively used within the business before, but our ability to deploy that, I think we were probably up and running within days, effectively, to use that as an RMS solution in our business. And so deploy fast. And we've seen this year, we've sort of, from an RGI perspective, our year-on-year change is outperforming our comp set by about 10 points. So that's really significant in our business in terms of the improvement of performance there. How much is that technology? How much is that the work of the revenue management team? Yeah, it's difficult to say, but the 2 things work hand in hand. It's the human element, the interpretation of the data, and the execution of that, and the use of the data, the visibility that we're getting through Flyer as the application. we see guest satisfaction up in our business. So we were running, we were running at 9.2, and we're up to nearly 9.4 now within a guest satisfaction perspective in our business. This last couple of weeks, we saw the first time that we had 0, 1, 2, or 3-star reviews through Google. And when you think that, again, 50% of our business is F&B, is a restaurant experience, I find that extraordinary. Everyone has an opinion on your burger, and they're not afraid to give that, so delivering that's really important. And of course, we all know the headwinds around labour, and actually our labour costs are down year on year as a result of the better use of automation, really focusing on what the role of individuals are. And for me to come from Citizen where we said that we could run a 250-key hotel with 1 person on reception, when I've got 123 and 2 people running reception, it's encouraging them to take the leap that actually the better adoption of the technology platforms that we've got in place will not negatively impact guest satisfaction. And so you see payroll costs in a strong position, revenue up, guest satisfaction up. It's a good place to be.
I think big point here as well, which is clear to see. It's technology is there to enable, but it needs to be a business decision on what do you want to focus on and how straight do you actually go for your goals, and maybe take a leap of faith based on experiences or something to achieve your goals, and not just maybe hide behind certain industry standards sometimes. Of course, it depends very much on which segment you're in and who you're selling to, but...
Yeah, I think we have to be braver in hospitality, if I'm honest. I remember, setting up Citizen M, and when we said we would go to a kiosk-only experience, people couldn't understand why you would do that, and yet Citizen M delivered some industry-leading levels of guest satisfaction. And fundamentally, it's about understanding the difference of what is service, what is hospitality. Doing something for someone like check-in isn't hospitality. I think it was mentioned before, I think it was mentioned on stage as well, this idea of removing friction and really understanding the need of that customer. And putting the customer in control of their journey is fundamental. And what it does is ultimately then free the team on property to deeply engage on a human level. And in this world that's increasingly competitive, that level of advocacy, that level of repeat is so fundamental that you really want to ensure that your team members are there to deeply engage with the customer on an emotional level, and then use the technology to support the process behind the scenes. And enable them to be better at their jobs, free them up. And that means that you can find people that are intrinsically human and put them in intrinsically human jobs. And, no surprise that they're then happier as a result of that, as opposed to when you're asking them to do analytical work or manual processing work.
Maybe one last sentence, because our time is up. Your recommendation, both of you, for the other operators, hoteliers here in the room, which are maybe thinking about their challenges at the moment. One sentence for your recommendation for 2026 in terms of how to look at their tech to support their business strategy. And I've really just one sentence, as if not, we're getting kicked off stage.
Can I go first? Yeah, be braver. And really listen to your teams that are using, that are working every day. Find out what gets in their way and use technology to remove it.
Human-to-human interaction is luxury, and simply put, happy team, happy guests, happy bottom line.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. Give a round of applause, please.